Hello everyone, this is Daily Developing, and today we're going to continue learning Python. In the previous video, we learned how to print hello world and we downloaded all the tools that we need, like PyCharm and Python. In this video, we're going to learn how to write a simple calculator. So without further ado, let's jump right in. First thing is I want to show you what variables are. And variables are just things that contain information. So for example, if you write a equals, we can say a hello, right? Hello world here. And then instead of printing this, you can just print a. And in this case, the quotation marks are absolutely necessary because without quotation marks, it thinks this is a command, right? If you put quotation marks, then it thinks it's not a command, it's just a string, right? So for example, if we get rid of the quotation marks, then it's trying to look for the command called hello and command called world. But, if we put quotation marks, then it knows, okay, so that's a string. And then we're saying, okay, so a is a string, a equals to hello world. And then, anything we change here, let's say hello into the world. If we put like hello max, right? And run this, it'll change. So this is called a string. Now, another type of variables are integers, and integers are just numbers, right? So they're just whole numbers. They can be positive or negative, but they are not decimals. So for example, we can put 5, right? And now if we print it, it shows us 5, right? And so on. In this case, you don't need you can't put quotation marks around 5, otherwise it's not going to be an integer. It's going to be a string. And we'll show the difference in a moment, okay? So let's just say we put 5 plus 5. Well, this will return 10. But if we put the 5 in the quotation marks, this will return an error because this guy is a string and this guy is an integer. So even though you might think, okay, so both of them are 5s, but one of them is a string, one of them is a different type than this one, right? So for example, it's the saying 5, the saying in quotation marks 5 plus 5 is the same thing as saying hello plus 5. Right? So if, for example, if somebody gives you like, what is hello plus 5 equal, you'd be like, that doesn't make any sense. The same way, it doesn't make sense for a computer if you say a string plus an integer. You can add integer plus an integer, but if you give it a string, it thinks like they don't match. I can't add them, right? The same way you can't add, like let's say a sentence. If I give you a sentence, right, you can't add 5 to a sentence. That just doesn't make sense. The same way it works here. All right, and now I would like to just show you a couple of commands. So again, this is plus. We could subtract, right? This will return 0. To multiply, we need shift 8. That would be the multiplication. And we can divide. Now, there are two types of divisions. Just one slash. And let's just, in this case, for example, it will return 1. Well, it actually returned 1.0. See, so this one slash returns a decimal, right? So for example, if we put 5 divided by 3 and run it again, it gave us not an integer, but this slash returns a decimal. But if you put double slash, it will return an integer, but it's going to actually round down. So the double slash always rounds down. It returns an integer. So pretty much what it does is it takes this point and everything to the right of it, and it just gets rid of it. So there's no rounding here. It just rounds down. So this is double slash. Now, next thing, there is another thing, the percent symbol, which is, so this one returns the remainder of the division. So in this case, 5 divided by 3, right? By the way, there's 5 divided by 3 equals to 1, and then the remainder is 2, right? So another command you can do is hashtag, and hashtag is a symbol for comment. So you can type anything here, right? And it doesn't change the code. So for example, without hashtag, it thinks this thing is a command, this weird word is a command, and it's going to crash, right? Doesn't make sense. But if you put a comment, you're pretty much saying, this is just a comment, ignore it. And now, for example, it works. So yeah, hashtag is just a comment, right? So in other words, what it does here is 5 divided by 3, right? this should equal to 1, and then it has 2 remainder, right? And 1 and 2 remainder. So what the percent symbol does is it takes the remainder and it ignores the value, right? So for example, if we do 7 divided by 3, 7 divided by 3, right? This should return, okay, so that it equals to 2 with 1 remainder. So this thing will return 1. So now let's run it, 1. This is just the remainder. All right, the next thing that I would like to show you is you can have multiple operations. Like for example, 7, you can, let's say, multiply this by 5 and then add 5, right? This should return 40. And then it also follows the pandas rules, right? So for example, in this case, it'll first multiply and then add. So as you see, it's not going to return, it's going to return 32. So if we run this, 32, so it follows the rules. And then you can also add parentheses if you want to change stuff. So all of that works, as you see. And then there's this last thing I'd like to show you is 7, right? Let's say in power of 2, how would you do it? You actually put 2 times multiplication symbol. 2 asterisks equals power symbol. So in this case, it's 7 in power of 2, 49, right? You could put 3. So this is going to be 7 power of 3. Okay, so now that we learned this couple of basic operations, I would like to show you how to write a simple calculator. So one of the things that we'll need is, instead of actually writing a number here, I want it to input. So for example, in here, I want to write input, and what that would do is it'll take my input. So let's just say I put hello here, and pretty much what I'm saying is take this input and now print it, right? So this is what it did. Now let's change it, but this input, right, returns a string. What we need to do is let's convert it into an integer. So now say, okay, this is going to be a number. And by the way, if you do int and then in parentheses, this will convert it into int. And then let's print just +5. What this would do is, let's say 5, we put 5. All right, so we added 5 to our input. So we grabbed the input, we made it into an integer, because the input on by default is a string. And again, you cannot add string in an integer. It doesn't make sense to a computer. To a computer, you need to actually give it 2 integers and sum them up together. All right. So this case, it just adds 5. Now, in order to make a simple calculator, let's just make it so that it accepts 2 numbers. So let's do first number, okay, equals int input. And then, by the way, there's a very handy shortcut in PyCharm. It doesn't work on others, it just works on PyCharm, but you can do Control D and it pretty much copies the code, copies the line. And now let's also do the second number. And now what I want to do here is first number plus the second number. So in this case, this is a very simple calculator that would add 2 numbers that will give them. Okay, so now I would like you to practice something for homework. Try making it so that you input 3 numbers and then you multiply those 3 numbers together. And you can play around, you can do 2 numbers and then you divide 2 numbers, right? Just practice all the operations that you've learned today and to really master it, right? So again, in order to be a good programmer, right, you need to practice a lot. Practice makes perfect. So just keep practicing, write simple calculators that just add, sometimes subtract. You can do all sorts of stuff. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please put thumbs up. It helps me in the YouTube algorithm. And see you next time.